Hello, book lovers. I'm Peg, and welcome to my channel. I realize my voice still sounds a bit like a frog, but you'll have to excuse it, and I do feel much better. Plus, I just had to make a video today to tell you about this latest book I read. As you may know from my last video, I'm on a reading project to read all the novels that Steve Donoghue recommended in his Apple Tag video of a week or so ago. And there's 7 or 8 of them. And because I always like what he suggests, I'm having a great time reading them. So I'm here to report on another one today. In fact, the one I'm reporting on is called The Seventh Function of Language by Lawrence Binet, which I'm not going to hold up the whole time. Anyway, Steve not only liked this a lot and called it the funniest, the most humorous novel of the year, but he actually wrote a review on it in Open Letters Monthly, and I have linked both his tape video talking about it and his review in the Open Letters Monthly down below so for you to read. Actually, when I had seen this book previously, it looked interesting, but it might be a little too scholarly for me. Actually, I could tell that it was about, it's a French book. It's been translated into English, but it dealt with French intellectuals during the 60s and 70s. This was the group that philosophers and psychologists and literary critics, they were very strong in it, and it apparently sat around in groups and discussed their deep thoughts. I kind of can picture it. I think they were all dressed in black turtlenecks, kind of like me. I might fit right in. But I think there's probably a lot of smoking going on. Anyway, I could name those people, reel off a list, and I'm sure you're familiar with a lot of them, the philosophers and some of the literary critics, but I have a terrible French pronunciation, so I'm not going to pronounce them, but I am going to also write at the bottom the important ones, the ones that I found to be important characters in this book. Actually, that was one of the problems when I started reading it the first time, is that this author throws in so many names of actual intellectual characters in this book that I think were probably popular and smart in the universities of Paris at that time. But there's so many of them that I didn't realize, I didn't know. And because you might call it historic fiction, when I read historic fiction, if there's a real life character, I like to look them up and learn what I can about them and learn something from the book. And I was trying to do that, but he mentions, I think, literally hundreds of characters, and it was driving me crazy. I was never going to finish the book doing that. So finally, after reading Steve's review and understanding a little bit more who I should follow and who is important, I started just paying attention to the 6 or 8 characters that were going to reappear and that meant something to the plot. And as I said, I've listed those at the bottom. Also, there's some political figures of the time that come into play. So anyway, the story itself is actually kind of a detective mystery story. During the first, one of the important literary critics, the father of linguistics, or whatever he's called, named Roland Barthes, excuse me, Steve had some real words for him. I don't think he likes him very much. But anyway, this guy, Bart, was hit on a day after he had met with the presidential candidate, then Mitterrand. He was hit coming home by a laundry truck and subsequently died. Now, this really happened. But this author, Binet, has made this into a mystery story, and with the idea that he was murdered. So, to begin the story, we have a inspector detective called in, who's like me, doesn't really understand all the semantics and linguistic talk, and he's really funny. In fact, when he tries to interview some of the fellow professors that worked with Barthes, he becomes so confused with how they answer that he has to get an interpreter. So he finds a junior professor who can sort of make sense in real talk, but can translate what these guys are talking about. So we have the Inspector Biard and his sidekick, Simon. And they carry on through the story, searching out clues. They evidently, all these intellectuals spend lots of time going to literary conferences in different parts of the world. So there's actually 3 different other cities that we get to visit as he tracks down the killer or what the problem is. Part of the mystery is not only who killed Barthes, but there's a supposedly secret stolen manuscript involving the 7th function of language, the title. And supposedly Barthes knew what it was, and it was somehow some sort of magical thing. We do learn what the other 6 functions were, which is somewhat interesting, and I could actually understand what they were saying. But this 7th function is a real mystery, and they spend the time not only searching for who killed him, but they suspect it was because of this paper that he had that has disappeared, talking about the 7th function. Okay, I'm not going to tell too much of the story, but I will say one of the funniest scenes in the novel takes place near the first, where the detective and his sidekick are trying to find some people who knew the dead guy, and they go to a gay sauna type bathhouse in Paris, and they want to go incognito, so they appear to be, that they should be there, so they wrap themselves in their towels and search for a certain guy who they've been told hangs out there. And I'll tell you, it is so funny. Now, I will warn you, there are some graphic and explicit sex scenes, mainly homosexual sex, both here and later on. So if that's going to bother you, stay away. But I'll tell you, it was excellently done. It completed the theme and the tone and actually the humor of it. And I thought definitely was not gratuitously done. Actually, this old straight lady learned a few things too. Ooh, blush. Okay, so anyway, after they hunt around Paris for a while, they are ready to take off to these 2 other places to follow down clues. Now, I'm not going to go into too much of this, but I want to be able to tell you something. So I'm resorting to an old teacher technique I used to use, and I'm going to give you some questions that you can answer as you read the book. So it'll give you what to look for. You know how they used to do that in school, give you questions that you needed to answer as you read the book. Okay, so this will give you, as I said, some sort of idea of what's going on, the rest of it. Okay, the first question that you need to look for that is significant is, why are there so many characters, including a uniformed policeman, who are missing fingers? Okay, the second question is, what character do the detective and his sidekick visit in Bologna, Italy? This character is a famous author that we are familiar with today, and this leads to another hilarious scene. Okay, and my last question that you'll end near the end, actually there's 3 sections of 3 different places they go, and the last one is Venice. And my question for that is, what are the 2 horrible acts that take place in less than 10 pages during their visit to Venice. Anyway, so those are the questions, and by the time you read this, if you stick with it, you'll know the answers, and also maybe know a lot more about linguistics and semiotics, and also what the seventh function of language is. So, okay. After I read this, I also read another review on it by Michael Dirda, who's a longtime Washington Post book reviewer. He's retired now, but he still reviews occasionally. And I was able to look up a review by him. He's probably my second favorite book reviewer. Long time. I used to follow him in the old days when the Washington Post had its own book page before the web, and he's one of those that can make kind of difficult books seem approachable and enjoyable to the average serious reader, I guess you would say. So he gave also a very interesting review of this book, and in it, near the end, he recommends two other what he calls literary type mystery novels. Both of them are translated, that he suggests somebody who enjoys this type of thing would like. And I just happened to have, they were, let's see, one of them was Umberto Eco's Foucault's Pendulum. I happen to have this used copy that I had picked up somewhere cheaply. And the other one is, let's see if I can get it on my other Kindle here, called the Papyrus Trilogy. I won't try to pronounce the name. It's also by a European author. Well, now it's gone. There it is. All right, cool cover, I think this one has. And I was able to download it. The hard copy was quite expensive, but I was able to download, well, so far just a sample of it from Kindle, on my Kindle. And it looks like it's going to be really interesting, too. It's, I think, $9.99, but it's like all the books in the trilogy for that. So I'm anxious to read that at some point. Okay, in other book news, I yesterday received my copy of the I always say it wrong, Sparsholt Affair by Alan Hollingworth, that has recently come out in England, and it won't be out here until in the U.S., I think in March maybe. I actually ordered it from Book Depository, and I don't work for them or anything, but I want to say that it sure is nice to be able to order books postage free that aren't going to cost any more when they become available on Amazon, and get them early. Actually, Steve received his advance copy of this in his book haul yesterday, and he talked about it. And it kind of interesting, his talk on whether he will or won't review it, but he'll definitely be talking about it, and there will be much talk about it. So anyway, actually, talking about my voice, poor Steve seemed to have terrible, well, he called it allergies to the season yesterday, the poor guy. I think somebody needs to send him a hand-embroidered big hanky or something from the Victorian age, bookish type hanky. And it just occurred to me, he says it's allergies to the seasonal allergies, but what if he's in his later life developed an allergy to dogs? Wouldn't that be horrible? Oh, so anyway, feel better, Steve. Bye.